This is the control tower. Make a left turn. Over.
Rayforce, yet another classic STG, developed by our old friends at the Taito Corporation. This is one of Taito's premier titles, a visually impressive spectacle at the time developed for Taito's F3 arcade board. Depending on the region or platform you've encountered it, you may know it under multiple names. The arcade version in Europe was renamed to Gunlock, and consumer ports of it were renamed to Layer Section. The Sega Saturn release of Layer Section was ported to North American markets under the title Galactic Attack from the publisher Acclaim. Several of those were working titles for the game while it was being developed actually, but today it's best known as Rayforce. The Ray's arcade Chronology, released by porting powerhouses M2, brought Rayforce to modern platforms, and this is the version I'm playing right now. At the time of its mid-90s release, this is one of the last traditional style shooters that came out before the advent of the Maniac shooter, also known as Bullet Hell, popularized by the game developer Cave, among other places. The main gimmick of Rayforce is an iteration and evolution of a feature introduced in top-down shooters such as Xevious a decade earlier, where you have a mechanism for targeting enemies below you. But instead of bombing them, here you use the lock-on laser system, which has a cool-looking effect. After this short introduction stage, which gets one accustomed to the gameplay mechanics, we run into our first big adversary, Dual Lance. It looks more intimidating than it actually is. Shoot its attachments and they fold like paper. Just make sure you're not directly in front of the main body, and it should go down pretty easily. Gameplay in Rayforce is relatively simple. You have your standard plasma shot, which fires forward and takes out enemies on your level. This can be updated to a maximum of 6 levels by collecting 3 red prism icons or 1 yellow prism icon. But the key to scoring high lies in the aforementioned lock-on laser system. The targeting reticle in front of your ship allows you to lock onto enemies below you. You have 4 seconds from that point to fire a homing laser, which will then zero in on its targets. You can lock onto up to 8 enemies at once depending on the level of your laser, which can be increased by collecting one of the L icons. A score multiplier is applied to every enemy you destroy with the laser in succession. Ideally, you want to have your laser level maxed out as much as possible. A death reduces your laser power and your shot power by 1 respectively, so getting hit is something you want to avoid as well if you intend to chase a high score. Also, for a more advanced technique, the chaining sequence between larger and smaller enemies is also important for getting big scores. Most large enemies will increase the chaining multiplier on their own, but they will increase the score multiplier if you do destroy them with the smaller enemies. G-Black and I tend to be more casual players who tailor these videos to a casual audience, so I won't go into any depth about any specific scoring techniques. This game is hard enough, just playing for survival. Detailed strategy breakdowns for Rayforce should be relatively easy to find, however. It isn't spoken about in the same reverence as, say, Battle Gorega or Radiant Silvergun in Ikaruga, but Rayforce has proven to be enduringly popular with the shmup community in the decades since its release. As for me, my first encounter with Rayforce was a bit unusual. An old childhood friend of mine introduced me to it and noted that there was a PC port of the game as Layer Section available in stores. I found this port in the bargain bin in one of the department stores I was in at the time, and I bought it to play on my old Pentium computer machine to date myself. My computer was underpowered at the time, so it ran the game slower than it should have been. I later found out that that port wasn't the best, but even with all that, I still couldn't beat it. I've always liked that warp effect that the boss, Uriah Soul, does when it comes in to start attacking you. The biggest threat this boss poses is in the beginning when it has all of its attachments. I usually focus on the top parts first, as those have the biggest chance of catching you off guard with the bullet spreads they shoot out. Once you destroy its sections, you just need to focus on dodging those green homing lasers it shoots out. You'll be seeing lasers like that throughout the game, so now's a good time to get used to dodging them. You just focus on lasering the center. Once the boss goes transparent about 3 times, it should be finished. I'm also fond of this visual effect when you descend into the planet's surface. Unfortunately, my fire there obscured the bullets coming after me. Not that there's any excuse for that shameful hit. At this point, I felt like starting from scratch, but after so many attempts, you never know if this will be the one. This is a tricky mid-boss because of those short, thin lasers it shoots out. They cover a lot of surface area when they appear, and they can collide with you quicker than you think. Ideally, you want to take those turrets out as soon as possible while you hammer the center. Rayforce was a very challenging game for me to get through overall, for what I would say are 2 key reasons. First reason being that there doesn't seem to be that much going on the screen at a glance. However, the enemies have some uncanny way of predicting where you'll move to, the way they shoot at you, leading to a lot of frustrating mistakes. And you only get extends at 1 million and 2 million points, so you don't have a lot of stock to make those mistakes. The other is an old holdover from the arcade days, where games had to generate revenue with quarters in the machine, the rank system. To put it simply, the longer you play without dying, the harder the game gets. Usually this information is obscured from the player, but I have the M2 gadgets enabled where you can clearly see how it affects the game's difficulty. The only way to reduce rank is to die, which cuts it in half from a max rank of 15. There's one last gameplay technicality I should mention. I have my primary shot frequency turned up to a higher rate from the arcade original. This makes it easier to take out larger enemies and it trivializes some of the boss encounters, but overall it doesn't make the game that much easier. It's a default setting for the M2 release, and is generally accepted by the shmup community for valid 1cc replays. Only downside is that the rapid shots can make enemy fire harder to see, as you saw earlier in this stage. The third boss, Giga, is more involved than the first two for sure. The key is just to hit that orb part with the lasers, and try to preempt all the other attacks as much as you can. By shooting down the mines it drops on you, and the laser installments on the side. Then you only really have to worry about the top cannons and the jet exhaust. Well, things about to start getting real in Area 4. This is the first stage where I have to spend a lot of time just zeroing in on the practice. For these initial enemies, I just start on the side and sweep through the center, drawing their fire as I sweep in and out. This stage in particular has a lot of ground enemies, so it's important to take them out as quick as possible, because they start flooding the screen with pot shots. The mechs I'm shooting down right away, so they don't have a chance to take aim at me with all the ground fire going on. Another wave of these enemies, so I'm just sweeping them again. Have to be careful that they don't clip you on the side though. The track rollers can be annoying when I'm trying to take everything else out, so it was important for me to watch out for those in particular. Those big turrets take 3 lasers each to take out. It's good to get rid of them as well before more enemies show up on screen. That's a particularly gnarly section of the stage. I had to do some quick thinking on my feet to get out of that unscathed. After that, we're getting ready to approach the final section of this stage, which can be more deceptively tricky than it looks. First thing I try to do is take out the mounted turrets. They're the most dangerous. The rolling ground machines will regenerate as long as the tower stands, so you have to watch out for those too. I had a clear shot at the tower, so I was able to sink it, but that doesn't always happen. And these Zoccos at the end tried to ambush you, so I have to carefully weave through them. This part isn't too bad as long as you take out the mechs as soon as possible. You don't really want to give them a chance to fire at you. For stage 4's boss, GPMS2, I'm focusing on taking out those laser turrets as soon as possible. The weird way those lasers arc at you can easily catch you off guard and kill you, especially with the mines coming in. That's exactly what happened. Fortunately, once the laser turrets are gone, you can defeat the boss in 2 ways. Shoot out its legs, or shoot the center. Not a very practical design for that situation. I actually found Area 5 to be one of the less difficult stages after practice. Here in the beginning, we just have some nice opportunities to rack up score with the lock-on lasers. These enemies are going to try to get behind you, and if they do, you just have to watch out for their concussion missiles. The next part, you just have to worry about these big guys and take them out as quick as possible. There's 3 total. After this, the rest of the stage will just be taking out rolling tank enemies on the road below, and also dodging bullet ambushes from the flying enemies currently on the bottom plane. Like most STGs, Rayforce's story and worldview is largely decoupled from the actual gameplay, and I'd be remiss in not talking about it as we approach the climax of the game, as it brings a much darker tone to the events that have transpired so far. At a point in the distant future, mankind had reached a technical revolution, the machine century. E-breakthroughs have accumulated into the most advanced AI and supercomputer the world had ever seen. Conhuman. Conhuman was tasked with regulating the planet's climate and was given control of the world's automated machines, while humanity focuses on the stars and sets up space colonies. As you could probably imagine, giving Conhuman this much control turns out to be a very bad idea. Conhuman begins to turn against its masters, making the planet inhospitable to human life and using its own weapons against it. In the catastrophic weeks that follow, billions of human beings are reduced to millions. For the guardian of the deep layer, Odin, I focus on taking out one of those cannon installments first. The purple electric blast won't hit you if you stay to the side, but it takes some skill to weave through the bullet spread that accompanies it. The second half of the fight had several patterns I had to learn. These tracking plasma balls in particular gave me the most trouble. The best thing I found was to try to get in front of them, especially on high rank where they're hard to weave through. I was able to get that quick kill though and avoid his other attack patterns. Now in my opinion, this is the hardest stage in the game. This is where I had to spend the most time practicing. These Zako enemies are the hardest thing to deal with during this first section. I'm using my sweep technique I developed in stage 4 to counter them. Just have to be careful because they'll aim a bullet behind them as they leave if you're too far up on the screen. The missile launchers and the turrets on the ground tend to be less of a threat, as long as you make sure they don't linger on the screen too long. For these next enemies, I try to focus on taking out the satellite turrets first so they don't spam the screen with bullets. The main bodies that are vulnerable to lasers are hard to take out before they leave the screen, because they take a lot of shots to kill. This section is a bit of a break, like an intermission to the next section, and a good opportunity to score. For this part, I want to take out that tank as quickly as possible. Cluster shots and those side turrets it shoots out make this a lot more difficult to deal with. Once it's gone, you just have to stay towards the bottom center mainly to deal with the twin laser shooting enemies. To continue the tragic story of Rayforce, during Conhuman's genocide of humanity, the planet's core was hollowed out and turned into the central nexus for Conhuman's physical form, which became the planet itself. Those humans that survived fled to the space colonies. There were 2 attempts to destroy Conhuman before it could exterminate the rest of humanity since. The first, Operation Meteor, ended in failure. The second, Operation Rayforce, is currently in progress. What you've been witnessing is a suicide mission. A last-ditch attempt by the RVA-818 X-Lay fighter plane to infiltrate the planet and destroy Conhuman, likely the former human homeworld itself. The easiest way I found to get through this section is to sink those pipe junctures. The base takes 5 lasers to clear, and when you shoot the side junctures, they sink. When the way is cleared, it's easier to intercept those aggressive enemies before they have a chance to hone in on you. And this last section is a tighter version of the things that we saw in the first section, so I largely know how to deal with this. My rank is maxed out now, so I have to be even more careful to avoid close calls. The boss of Area 6, Dynamo, has his weak point in the center, but I'm aiming for one of the side turrets first. It makes the initial phase easier if you destroy at least one of them. Now I can just concentrate on lasering the center. Most of this can be dodged by staying put in the center, but you want to make sure you take out those orange orbs before they have a chance to fire at you. The spread that they shoot is pretty nasty. Only need to move around for these homing lasers and these clusters that slowly track you. I didn't find the final area as hard as the previous one, but it does have some tricky sections. Getting rid of these enemies early is important, so they don't have a chance to overwhelm you. The mistake I made there was pivoting to the left. It wasn't as safe as the right side. This mini-boss's attacks mainly concentrate in the center, though slowly sweeping from left to right is an effective strategy, just making sure you don't entrap yourself doing so. And then you want to get up top to preempt some of these enemies after you defeat it. At last we reach the planet's center, corrupted from what it once was and remade into an inorganic stronghold. The important thing for these enemies is to take out those attachments as soon as possible before they have a chance to shoot those directional shots at you. With a strong enough level plasma shot, you should be able to just shoot right into the main enemies and take out the discs before they even have a chance to fire. This is the hardest part of the stage because of the unpredictable way the orange enemies come at you. I usually just stay towards the center, but you may have to bank left and right, or up and down, depending on what direction they come and how the bullets are angling towards you. It can be hard, but it's best to laser the long purple enemies that fly in before they have a chance to hit you while all this is going on. For this section, I focus on taking out the small enemies first with the laser, because they shoot directly at you. The larger planes' bullet arcs can be avoided if you just stay in the center of them. Then you get this much welcome break for the final battle. There are two sequels to Rayforce comprising the Ray series. Raystorm has an unrelated story, taking place on an alternate Earth. Ray Crisis is a prequel to Rayforce, expanding upon the reasons behind Conhuman's malfunctions and its genocidal campaign against humanity. A hacker attempts to defeat Conhuman from within, which obviously isn't a complete success. The final boss, the main battle body of Conhuman, protecting its central control tower, has two phases. This is a difficult start with these complicated bullet patterns to dodge. With that depth, this is now a final shot moment, with no lives to spare. I barely escaped that attack and I couldn't get the kill fast enough to avoid these homing lasers. These are especially difficult to dodge on the highest rank. Fortunately, the second phase of the boss is easier than the first. To dodge this attack, you want to be on the far left and then the far right respectively. Hitting those two foreground arms it has with the primary shot is the priority, before it has a chance to activate that black hole vacuum. For this next attack, you just want to square yourself up between the two plasma rings and hit it with everything you got with the lasers. Those purple shots are easier to dodge than they look, because you can influence their direction by maneuvering. I was quick, so I was able to finish it off before the next phase of attacks. Now let's end this. Ironic, a human creation, with human in its name, would end up becoming the architect of mankind's near demise. The cradle of humanity, sacrificed to spare the few that remain. I'm EX. Until next time.